18 minutes past 6 o'clock. We're talking money and business tonight here on Drive Time with Viv Starkis, Jonathan Davis and Karen Frick. A story we covered before Christmas here on Drive Time. The project to widen two stretches of the M25, the UK's busiest motorway through the three counties, may have wasted £1 billion of public money. No one will lose their jobs and nothing will happen to recover the cost. Not in real terms. MPs on the Commons Public Accounts Committee say it would have been a lot cheaper simply to allow drivers to use the hard shoulder at peak times instead. The head of the committee, Labour MP Margaret Hodge, is accusing the Highways Agency of mishandling the project.
It took them 9 years to sign a contract, far too long. They didn't look at alternative options. We could have used the hard shoulder at times when traffic was very heavy, which would be much cheaper than actually widening the road. They spent £80 million of your and my money on consultants. Now, a couple of weeks before Christmas, I spoke to the chairman of the National Audit Office who conducted the report, and he's actually close to £1 billion. Can the public sector ever be trusted to spend public money wisely, Karen?
No. In short, honestly.
You come from a commercial background.
I do. I'm afraid not. In my experience, I mean, there's one example. Take the other example of the Naira project. Where's the money gone for that? Where's the Naira project? You know, I'm afraid this isn't the first time that this has happened, and I'm sure, you know, this is the Highways Agency. Next time it will be another agency, and it's just...
Having said that, Viv is here from the Enterprise Awareness, is the business manager there at the Business Link in Hertfordshire. Your organisation, funded by public money, is doing good in the community.
Well, there are statistics to prove that we are supporting the business community very well. So, for example, I think the statistic is 92% of people that have come to us for support over a period of 3 years are more likely to survive. 92% of them are likely to survive in business, where against those people that don't seek support.
So what's the difference you make for them? What's the difference that what you teach them or train them to do makes to their operation?
Well, it's different for every organisation, but what we try and do is actually understand what the needs of that business are and try and support them in a way that's going to move them forward. So we'll diagnose exactly what the situation is and give them some advice and some support to actually move them forward.
So no one can argue with the funding you get because it's making a difference, and hopefully after November your organisation will still be funded and you'll have your job. Jonathan, public sector, spending public money, is it ever a wise move forward?
The phrase public money, of course, what it means is your and my taxes. There are countless examples where they have squandered our money. I'm apolitical here, but I did find it funny that Margaret Hodge, on your piece there, she said they've been looking at it for 9 years. Well, excuse me, who was in government during that 9 years? But that's, you know...
She does seem to miss that point, that it was her government.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? How many billions on Nimrod? How many billions on the nuclear submarines? I read recently that Edinburgh Council employees were spending £185 a month phoning the speaking clock. Now, we have countless...
Get out of it. No one does that.
We have... Exactly. That's how ridiculous it is. In other words, those in the public sector generally have absolutely no conception of efficiency, of... saving money. They are into squandering because, you know what, it ain't their money, they don't care. I've heard it and I've seen it so many times, and I think it's about time. Look, why is it that chief executives of NHS trusts are earning twice what the Prime Minister earns?
Well, I think some of the politicians do care very deeply, and I know Mike Pennin was on this morning and he was absolutely furious about that. So you do get politicians that do care.
And what's he doing about it?
I was going to say, but nobody is taken to task over it.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? If you were in any form of company and you, as an individual, lost the company that level of money, you would be sacked.
Or at least they'll try and come back after you for the money.
Or something. You know,
unless you're a banker, of course, that's the problem.
But, yeah, but I mean, a lot of banks are private. Some aren't, but some are.
we still bail them out, and that's a root problem.
That's another issue.
Well, actually, it's a root problem. But getting back to public sector, they are squandering our money. They are paid an awful lot of money. The number of people earning more than 50,000 a year in the public sector is outlandish. And the number of people earning more than the Prime Minister is outlandish. There has to be a restriction on their budgets, and thank goodness someone is finally doing something about it.
Should we look at people's salaries at the top end of the employment ladder and judge it purely on performance-related issues? Because in the real world, that's what happens.
I think we should also be looking at not only salaries, but also at wastage. An awful lot of money, for example, in the NHS, is just wasted money. For example, their stationery. They could buy it all from one supplier and save themselves a fortune. But no, they're buying paper clips from 30 different companies. That's ludicrous. Any large company will go with the buying power and they will say, look, we need paper clips, for example.
This is all clearly very obvious, and people listening at home are thinking, absolutely, they'll agree with you, Karen, they'll agree with you, Viv, they'll agree with you, Jonathan. This is all really obvious.
The previous government...
So why isn't anything being done about it if it's all so obvious?
Well, clearly it is. We're taking public spending back to 2006-07 levels. The fact is the previous government exploded the public sector for their own political means. And I'm not saying that the current government don't do similar things, because I'm sure they will.
So what's the future really hold for our society, Viv?
I'm not quite sure, to be totally honest with you. We always go through a recession every now and again, and I think we have to be positive about things. And it doesn't matter what the economy is doing. There are people that will be making money, and there are people that will be going out of business. And we were chatting about this earlier.
Yes, we were. Yes, indeed.
Karen, are there still opportunities for people to make real money?
I think there is. I mean, as Viv rightly said there, we were talking about this earlier, and there are, within recession, there are always companies that make money, and equally in the good times, as we like to call it, there are companies that go out of business. I think it's very easy to blanket. I think if you can run your business well, okay, you might during recession not make as much money as you would like. You can navigate if you have a good product, if you have a good service, if you have a good, a basis of a company, you can guide that company through any hard time, and you can also make it flourish.
I'm sure that's absolutely correct. For individual businesses on the micro level, there are opportunities to make money. I'm a macroeconomist. I look at the economy in big picture. We're seeing public sector cuts. We're seeing unemployment rising. We see debt levels which are not falling. We see banks which are literally insolvent, and that will become apparent in due course.
Expand on that. What do you mean? They are insolvent and it will become apparent?
Just go down any high street of any town or city in the UK, and what do you see on the first floor? You see to let. In other words, the commercial property crash is going to pale any other crash into insignificance, and there's going to be red ink all over bank balance sheets, and they're going to go cap in hand to the government and say, give us some more money, our money. And I do hope, my goodness, I hope that the then Chancellor says, go away, you made the lending.
But aren't the banks, most of the banks, making healthy profits all over again? I mean, they got the new levy announced today, of course.
Well, the levy is a sham. $3.5 billion against $850 billion that we gave them 2 years ago. No, the banks are making money because we handed them a load of money and we slashed interest rates. That's why they're making money. But they are not making money because the economy is strong. Anything, in fact, entirely to the contrary. And although, as I say, on the micro level, yes, there are opportunities. On the macro level, people better batten the hatches down, because there's going to be a great deal of difficulty going forward.
Did the government not put it into the contract that they had with the banks that we bailed out, that they were to pay this money back in some way,
so
shape,
if they pay
or
it back,
form, though?
So they'll pay it back. So what 850? No, they're not going to pay back 850 billion. No way. It's not going to happen.
Were we, the public, shortchanged when those contracts were written?
Absolutely. We didn't put anything in there about bonuses. $3.5 billion, as you say, the bank levy. They just paid themselves £7 billion in bonuses. No. The banking system is the root problem in our economy, and until we sort out the banking system, we are not going to have a strong economy.
See, our economy is very much a service economy. The city almost drives this country forward. We don't really make much stuff. We are a service industry. How do we change that?
We start looking at the German model. They are clearly a manufacturing and exporting economy. And we also don't bail out the banks, because the less we do of that, the more money the government will have in order to boost the economy. We keep raising all these taxes and giving it to the bankers.
Manufacturing has picked up slightly, though, recently.
Yeah, well, that's, as I say, the result of hundreds of billions of stimulus into the economy. That's ending now.
Karen, I can ask you, you started your business online, you've gone retail.
Yes.
Did you use the banks or did you use your own funding?
No, I went to a bank. And I have to say that although, yes, there was a lot of hoops and there was a lot of paperwork, you know, we were given the finance that we needed. But that was only because we could prove that we, as a company, obviously have been trading for many years. We obviously had a good balance sheet, you know, and that went an awful long way. However, if I had gone in there as a person who had never perhaps been made redundant and decided, look, you know, I'm going to do something, you know, to help myself, I'm going to start a business. If I'd have gone to the bank and said, please, can you lend me? The answer would have surely been no.
In some cases, unfortunately, the party would have been yes.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment, but
no.
that's probably the reason why we're in this space, because they used to say yes.
Exactly.
This is
But
Drivetime.
now, is there not a case of too much of the saying no? Because after all, in order to get the economy moving, we do have to have new business. And, you know, much as in the past I couldn't agree with you more, there was far too much of the word yes and not nearly enough of the word no. Now we seem to have swung the pendulum completely in the opposite direction. And if you do have someone who's got a good idea, which might just work, are they actually getting the help? And the answer at the moment, I think regrettably, would probably be not.